All right, we're live. Hey guys, welcome back to Critical African Thinkers. How we all doing? As we know, this is a place where we examine everything under the microscope of logic to ascertain what is most factual and logically consistent. So today, I want to be talking about the controversy surrounding the British pop rap group Bob Dylan, right? And I'm going to be talking about that controversy itself. I'm going to talk about the group, what they said, what they did, and the reaction of the British media to what they said, um, the reaction of the American political establishments and Zionists themselves, and what the implication of those reactions. What are the implication for the conversation surrounding anti-Semitism? What are those implications? Those are what I'm going to be talking about today. So I'll just do some monologue, maybe a 10 to 15-minute monologue before I bring in Stanley, where we can now have a robust conversation on these issues. So a few days ago, except you've been living under a rock, you would have seen this. You would have seen this by now, where the British punk rap group called Bob Vylan. There are two of them, but one of them during there was a show in Glastonbury in the UK. They were having a festival, Glastonbury Festival, and at a certain point, they began to show their solidarity for the people of Palestine. And they said, "Free, free Palestine." And then they started chanting, "Death, death to the IDF, death, death to the IDF." Now, so that is what has been causing this controversy. This group chanted "Death to the IDF." Now, the reaction of the British media and the British establishment, I've seen GB News and so many other British media outlets, they were just falling over themselves, trying to prove who was more offended, who was most offended by this chant, which the crowd themselves joined the chant of "Death, death to the IDF." Then going to the American political establishment, I think Bob Dylan had a visa to perform in the US. Now that visa has been revoked, right? And there has been criminal investigations that has been launched into this. There's been a whole lot of uproar. But the most telling thing about all this is that some people, Zionists to be precise, are framing this as anti-Semitic, that this was an attack on Jewish people, that the chant "Death to the IDF" is anti-Semitic and is an attack on Jewish people. But we're going to be looking at the implication of that statement itself. I mean, not this chant "Death to the IDF," the implication of saying, that the IDF means you are calling for the death or the killing of Jews or the killing of Israelis. Does that make any sense, right? And the title of this video or the title of this stream is "No One Does Anti-Semitism Quite Like Zionists," and I'm going to explain why I put that title, why I put the title in that manner. Because if you look at the original anti-Semites, part of their claims were that Jews were not really from the countries that they were from. They were not really from Poland, they were not really from Germany, that they didn't have any loyalty to those countries. They were foreign elements essentially. And so it was easy for them to sabotage the countries that they lived in. There was a global conspiracy about Jews and so on and so forth. Most of it is wrong. There might be some truth to it, maybe in terms of some Jewish oligarchs. But for the most part, most Jewish people were just ordinary people living in societies that they were born into, right? They were just like any other ethnic group within Germany, within Europe, within other parts of the countries that they lived in. And if you look at what happened during World War One, Hitler blamed the Jews for Germany losing World War One. So it essentially paints Jewish people as a monolith who have a single political ideology, who have a single goal, who have a single socio-cultural goal, right? It ascribes collective features to a group of people. Now, when you come to this chant, the chant itself, the chant is not a very good one, right? However, he was talking specifically about the IDF, and the IDF are what they are military. They're military. Militaries are involved in the killing of people, and they themselves are being killed. That's the business of militaries. So when he was saying death to the IDF, does that mean he was saying death to Jewish people? Does that mean he was saying death to Israelis? Now, if you are going to say yes, that's what it means, It means you're saying that all Jewish people or all Israelis are a part of the IDF. It means you're saying that all Jewish people or all Israelis are a part of the IDF. That is the logical conclusion from that statement. When you say a chant that says death to a particular military means death to the people, the civilian population, what you're essentially saying is that that civilian population is a part of the military. So now the implication of this is that, militaries are legitimate targets. War crimes only exist or come into play when you are attacking civilian areas or where prisoners of war are being killed or treated horribly or terribly. But in a theater of war, then military personnel, they are all targets. They are all legitimate targets. So if you are saying that all Israelis or all Jewish people are part of the IDF, you are essentially saying that what Hamas did on October 7th was justified. What Hamas did by attacking civilians was justified because all those people became automatically. It means that the Jewish people in Israel were all combatants. Therefore, it was legitimate for Hamas to have attacked them. So this is the dangerous you go down where you just uncritically and impulsively label everything as anti-Semitic. You are in fact, Zionists are the one who claim Jews all over the world for Israel. I mean, if Israel is being criticized, say it's anti-Semitic when not every Jewish person is Israeli. What does that mean? It means that you're saying that every Jewish person is Israeli. You are by making all over the world for the acts of Israel. That in itself is collective guilt. That is ascribing collective features to a diverse group of people. I have seen and interacted with Jewish people online, and I can see that they're not a monolith. There is no group that's a monolith. Even the Palestinians themselves are not a monolith. There are people the Jewish people, were very vocal against what Israel is doing. And even that, they being Jewish doesn't even shield them from being called anti-Semites or whatever, or self-hating Jewish people. We can see Norman Finkelstein and so many other people being put in that category. So what am I driving at? What I'm driving at is when you make this association, when you yourself as a Zionist creating this association between Israel and Jew, then you make Jewish people, you're making them essentially unsafe because you are making them responsible for the actions of Israel. And Israel is a separate country in itself. It calls itself a Jewish state, but not all Jews are Israeli. So back to the chant by Bob Vylan, right? Death to the IDF. Yeah, it's a bad thing to it's a bad thing to say that. However, in a technical sense, the militaries are meant to kill and be killed. So if Hamas had attacked, if Hamas had restricted the attack to military installations and military personnel on October 7th, it'd still be a bad thing, but would it be that of an atrocity? Not really, right? But the atrocity occurred when they attacked civilians, right? So we have that very, very clear. That has to be stated very, very clearly. But when you are saying that, when you talk about the IDF, you mean Jewish people, you're essentially saying that all Jewish people are combatants. And in a theater of war, all combatants are legitimate targets for military offense. They're legitimate targets for military offensive. So you have to be careful when you are making these assertions. We know that today charge of anti-Semitism is essentially useless because it doesn't mean anything. If you're called an anti-Semite today, chances are you are likely someone who opposes a genocide. You're likely someone who doesn't like what is going on in Palestine, and you're speaking up about it. You're speaking against it. You're going to be labeled an anti-Semite. I mean, I get called out every day on Substack for just making very reasonable points. I have no issues with the Jewish people, but I do have a lot of issues with the way Israel is conducting its affairs, with the way it is so militaristic, with it so militant, attacking everyone around it. with the starvation of the people in Gaza, with the disruption of the life in Gaza, with the destruction of property, the killing of civilians, with the bombing of almost every civilian infrastructure in Gaza, with the bombing of hospitals, of churches, of schools, of mosques, of everything, leveling everything in Gaza. I have issues with that. But my having issues with that and voicing that, does that mean I have issues with Jewish people? No, no, it doesn't make any sense. But that is what these Zionists would want you to believe. They are going to they want to make you think that Israel equal to Jew, and that anything you say against Israel, you're automatically saying it against the Jewish people. And by extension, that makes it anti-Semitic. But we can see where that slippery slope leads to. So we have to be much more critical in our analysis. We have to be much more grounded in reality and in fact, so that you don't cheapen anti-Semitism, which is a real thing in itself, and it's not a good thing. I mean, I have seen a whole lot of, especially from the right. Most of the anti-Semitism, the substantive anti-Semitism, actually come from the right. Before I left Twitter, there were a lot of right-wing anti-Semites. So it's a bad thing, but you cheapen it when you just throw it out on any critique of Israel, any critique of Israeli people, you just throw it out. You cheapen what it means to, cheapen the concept of anti-Semitism. And it's like the boy who cried wolf. Many people are getting much more immune to being called an anti-Semite. I mean, a year, 2 or 3 years ago, being called, everyone would dread being called an anti-Semite. I remember the first time I was called that label, which was sometime this year, and it was from a guy that I actually liked, and I liked interacting with on Substack. So I made something critical. We usually agreed on so many things, but then I said something critical about Israel, and he just came up with the vibe of you're an anti-Semite. It hurt me. It hurt me. I would say that it hurt me because this was someone that I respected. This was someone that I liked. So for him to be making that sort of flippant accusation really did not go down well with me. But after that, I became immune to all of that nonsense. And I told him that, okay, you know what, you've done the worst. You've said the worst that you can say. I know I'm not an anti-Semite. You said the worst that you can say. So what now? And you can see a whole people are getting much more comfortable being critical of Israel. People are getting much more comfortable, just taking the hits with being called an anti-Semite. They were like, no, I can take it. That's something that wasn't available a few years ago, a few months ago. So when you overuse something, when you overflog something, that's what happens. So I'm going to be putting the link in the chat. Stanley, you can come in. Let's have a conversation on this. What are your thoughts about the chant "Death to the IDF"? Do you think it's anti-Semitic for Bob Vylan in solidarity with the Palestinians to have said something like that? Do you think that the blowback, the uproar that it's caused so far, do you think it's warranted? I mean, criminal investigations have been launched. The BBC is giving apologies. They've said that they should have pulled that live stream when that was happening, so on and so forth. So many things. America has revoked the visa of the band Bob Dylan. So apparently they can't come to the US to perform anymore. So is this a case of free speech, or is this a case of hate speech? Did it go too far? Did it go beyond what it was supposed to? I mean, it's offensive speech anyway. But however, there's one part of this conversation that I missed, right? A whole lot of people who are having their tights up in their bum about this "Death to the IDF" chant are Israelis themselves. And right now, one of the songs that is topping the chart in the Israeli music industry is a song that literally calls for genocide against Palestinians. I mean, Israelis are dancing and rocking to that song while an actual genocide, is going on in Gaza. There were videos of Israelis sitting on a hill overlooking Gaza, celebrating, dancing, singing, playing music, watching the IDF bomb Gaza, and they were like, bomb, bomb, bomb Gaza. These were the same people that when Iran started to hit back, Stanley, you can come in. When Iran started to hit back, they started crying, "Oh, Iran is attacking hospitals. You have bombed every hospital in Gaza. Iran is attacking civilian areas. You have bombed almost every house in Gaza. What right do you have to now all of a sudden discover that it is inhumane to bomb hospitals or to bomb civilian centers? I mean, the double standards and the hypocrisy is too much. It's just bare. It's just there for everyone to see. Even while the war with Iran was going on, Israel still continued its onslaught. In fact, it intensified its onslaught in Gaza. I mean, there were reports of up to 60 people being killed every single day. 60 people or more being killed every single day. And most of these people are people who are just trying to go get aid. They're trying to get food, and the IDF opens fire on them. Of course, they will always deny initially that, oh, that's not what happened. But as we can see, later on, the reports will come out that that's actually what happened. I saw a video of that. People who were gathering to take food were being shot at by the IDF. They've killed journalists. They keep killing journalists. I mean, it's insane that something like this will be happening, right? And then someone thinks that the chant calling for the death of military personnel is anti-Semitic or something. It's just crazy. Hey Stanley, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm fine. It's been a while since we last talked. So welcome to the show.
Yes, I've been busy, busy.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So I hope you got the gist of the conversation, right?
I do. Am I muffled?
No, 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 you're fine.
Okay, because I see this StreamYard's using the wrong microphone. This should be somewhat better. You know what? I heard something happened at Glastonbury, but I didn't follow up on it. I guess I'm kind of a snob these days. I saw Glastonbury. Well, you know what? If I find out about it, I do. If I don't, it's not here.
Mm,
But I agree with you. I mean, people, it's just too easy to associate Israel with the Jewish diaspora apparently. But I don't know. I think my thoughts on it, oddly enough, are it always entertainers when they get involved in politics always seem to muck it up.
mm.
Uh, I I don't know much about Bob Villain. Is that his name?
Yeah, it's actually a group. The two of them. I thought it was one person, but
Oh.
it turns out there are two of them, both calling themselves Bobs, right? And they're not releasing their personal identity. They said for the sake
Well, I
of
mean, I guess it's a play on Bob Dylan, so, I mean,
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
appreciate that, but,
yeah,
no, I don't other than entertainers aren't politicians, and a lot of times they, are kind of I don't know, they're not deeply studied. However, is not all Jews live in Palestine in, Israel, and,
yep,
I mean, I've been to Israel, kids go into the IDF mandatorily, at least those who qualify for a couple years, but that's the extent of the civilian. Now, I will say this. I am not an expert on it, but I do know that, you would see little old ladies on the bus in Haifa, with their rifles slung over their shoulders. So I don't know how that works. But, yeah, I pretty much agree with you. I don't have anything much to add.
yeah, yeah. And to the point that you made about when entertainers get into politics, they always mock it up. Of course, they always do because they're stepping outside of their sphere of influence or their area of competency. So they're but the thing is, those who are supposed to be experts in this are morons on it, especially the politicians and the philosophers. There are a few good ones, but most of them, they are either deliberately lying or they're just trying to whitewash horrific things that are going on, right? They just whitewash things that are terrible. I mean, why is this war still dragging on in Gaza? When is it going to end? When everyone in Gaza is dead? Is that the point? You want to drive
Well, funny
it
you
into
should say that. Apparently, I did a story on my show this morning. It would be, I guess, your afternoon. There've been like, oh, I think 100 or more people killed just going to get aid.
yeah.
Like there's a story about a US company. I don't know exactly what they do, but they've been like just firing and they've been firing bullets at crowds. This is a US company. So yeah, it's till everybody's dead. Well, just going to get food or medicine could cost you your life.
I mean, why in this age with the level of civilization that the world has at this point in time is this acceptable? In the face of the world, in the face of the international community, it seems like it is stain on humanity that something this publicized is happening, and the world seems incapable of dealing with it. The world is
Well, I think the world is incapable of dealing with it like on both sides. I mean, there's nothing saying Hamas can't go, hey, we give up. So they're the ones who did the attack. So, there's a good argument that Israel went overwhelmingly, out of proportion in the response. However, Hamas is not blameless. The problem, one of the problems I have is, they're basically using the civilian population on their side as human shields.
but what evidence do you have for that?
Hamas is running Gaza.
Okay.
They are waging a war or were waging a war. Civilians are dying, obviously. If it's to that point, well, you might have to capitulate.
Okay. So
I mean,
I mean,
just look at the face of it. Let's not get into the details because there's some behind the scenes stuff with Hamas. If you go back over history, Netanyahu has had some involvement, and I'm not real sure. I just know that there was some, pitting Hamas against the Palestinian Authority.
yeah.
I'm nowhere near expert. That's something you probably know way more about. What I am saying is nobody told Hamas to attack Israel on October 7th. Okay, they made the first move. They planned it out, they gamed it out, they executed it. Now, I'm not going to go and say, well, hey, they deserve what they get. I would expect a proportional response from Israel because civilians did die, quite a number of them. However, if you are fighting a war, okay, and you are obviously not going to win this war, and you've got women, children, and old people, have being evacuated, they're in the line of fire, you might have to capitulate. Okay, you're not going to fight to the death. You're going to think, well, hey, we can't be having civilians, in the line of fire like this. I'm not going to go and, blame 100% of this on Israel. Hamas has some culpability in this.
Okay.
If your mothers and sisters and brothers are getting killed, then you need to lay down your weapon, okay, and
Okay.
find another way. Obviously, no other power uh, is gonna get in there and slog it out with you.
Yeah. So
So,
yeah, I
it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different than your opinion. I'm basically saying a pox on both their houses.
yeah. So I get your point, and I partially agree with it. I think Hamas has responsibility for what's happening right now because
Right. They are the government or were.
of course they are the government of Gaza, right? And what they did on October 7th was an atrocity. It was atrocious. However, it's prior to October 7th, right? Israel constantly waged acts of aggression against these people, right? Remember that Israel is occupying Gaza. Israel is the occupying power in Palestine. And
Yes.
the atrocities of the Israeli government against these people is well documented. It wasn't going to cease, it wasn't going to stop. Palestinians were still being killed before October 7th.
Oh, well, I
Palestinians
mean, what the,
where
you know,
and are
the
where
settlers in the
and
West
are
Bank, that's
not just not
atrocious.
just not just settlers, the Israeli military. If you listen to someone
Mhm,
like Norman Finkelstein, he'll tell you
mhm,
that the Israeli military routinely does what he calls mowing the lawn, where they just go in and kill Palestinians, traumatize them, stop them from going to their olive groves, destroy their farms. There was even an incident of recent where certain Christian Palestinian villages were attacked by Jewish settlers.
mhm.
But the Israeli military and the Israeli police do nothing to stop any of that. These people cannot even bring a case against these illegal settlers, right, before any court of competent jurisdiction. So you cannot impose such a condition on a people and not expect them to react one way or another.
Oh,
And the
well, not
condition,
only that, they're
yeah,
really not even a state. You
yeah,
know, they're
and
I mean, Palestine isn't like a state, because I mean, I would actually, and I know people would beat me up for this, but you know what? Israel is a UN recognized state. Okay. They're
mhm,
basically going against like an occupied territory. That's not a battle of equals. You know,
yeah.
sometimes, you know, listening to, you know, the Israeli government, you would think, well, this is like a battle of titans. Well, no, they're not.
It's not. I mean, it was very clear when they were fighting Iran that okay, this is a battle of almost equals, right? Because Iran could punch back, right? I mean, look at how the Israeli the missile defense system fared against Iranian missiles, right? With Hamas's low cost backyard rockets, the Iron Dome was touted as the epitome of defense and all that, but Iran's missiles, ballistic missiles, was able to cause considerable damage to Israel. That is that is a war between equals, right? That's a war between two powers. In Palestine and in Israel currently, it's essentially one state. There is really no Palestine. It's one state where the Israelis systematically systematically are depriving people within their jurisdiction of rights as citizens, of rights as human beings,
Excuse me.
occasionally go in and kill them. I mean, look at the proposal, the so-called proposal, the Camp David Accord, and so others, where they proposed a two-state solution and they said the Palestinians rejected it. It's insane, right? You want to create a Palestinian state. There are so many settlers now in the West Bank, right? Gaza is at one end. Now the new Palestinian state that you want them to agree to will be balkanized into three areas. The West Bank will be shared, would be divided into three non-contiguous areas, right? Area A, B, and C. Area A, which is the bulk of the territory, will still be under Israeli control. Area B would be under partial Israeli and Palestinian control, and the small area C is what will be left for the Palestinian state. And people are wondering why the Palestinians rejected such a deal. It's one state. Two states is almost not viable at this point in time because the settlers are so entrenched that it's almost impossible to take them off. It's almost impossible to remove them. So it's either a one state solution or genocide. And I think Israel is going the way of genocide. But the truth is, you can't push people to the wall and do not expect them to fight back. Many of these Hamas fighters, they are orphans from a previous Israeli onslaught in Gaza. And what Israel is doing now is creating more people in 10, 20, 15 years' time that are going to want to carry out something like this in the future. So the
I agree.
strategy doesn't make any sense. For Israel's security and for the security of the region, it makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't I from the United States side, again, this and this thing back and forth with Iran. Uh and I know it's slightly off topic, but where I'm coming with this is the United States doesn't seem to be well, I was going to say a mitigating force. It doesn't seem to be the voice of reason in this whole debacle.
No, the US is essentially enabling what Israel is doing. I mean, the US is
I agree.
solidly behind what Israel is doing in terms of giving it international cloud cover and whatever, right? Supplying
Well, I
it with
mean,
weapons.
it's giving it defenses.
Yeah, giving it defenses, giving it weapons, money, just name it. It's just giving it a
Well,
blank
now
check.
we've basically given them, I don't know, in my opinion, limited that it may be, and their technicalities, and but what we did for Israel basically means we joined the war as an
Yep,
active participant,
yep.
back and forth between Israel and Iran. And that's not something funny enough. And I talked about it this morning. The last time I looked, and it was just a few days after, the US hit those nuclear sites, I was shocked to find that like 50 some percent of people didn't approve of it. That kind of surprised me. Usually when the US does something like that, you get a little bit of a patriotic swell, until the dust settles and people find out exactly what it means. People were not, people almost, I want to say it was 58% of people didn't approve of what getting involved
No,
in
but,
bombing Iran.
but it's not surprising given the political climate and given MAGA's obsession with isolationism, right? Um,
Correct.
the,
Yes.
the MAGA voices like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, they've been very vocal about US non-interventionism in the Middle East, right? So they've sort of prepared the ground for right wingers to be against such an action. Then, second, Iran didn't attack the US directly, so there was really no basis for such an action. Third, those on the left
Well, they
naturally,
did, in response, they did hit a US facility, but they gave
well,
like warning, hey, we're going to do it.
no, no, I'm saying before that, that was a symbolic,
Right, 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 right.
uh, this thing. See,
There's a point here in the chat. Somebody brings up the Bush doctrine.
mm,
Uh, Trump didn't follow the Bush doctrine. You're supposed to let Congress know you're going to do it, and I guess
mm,
Trump doesn't really, maybe rightly so, doesn't trust Congress, so he just went ahead and did it.
yeah, yeah. So the thing is when you look at the Iranians, right, they are an autocratic, theocratic regime. I think they are bad for the Iranian regime is bad for the people of Iran because it's oppressive. But there's something that you cannot accuse them of, which is being suicidal or irrational. They're not suicidal, they're not irrational. I mean, people who have power want to perpetuate themselves in power, they want to leave. It would be suicide. It would be suicide for Iran to want to take on the US in a direct confrontation, and that's why the Iran tried to de-escalate the situation with the US, where it gave notice of the symbolic strike that they were going to do, almost apologetically.
Right.
Immediately, they apologized to the people in UAE or that country where the base was was stationed. They gave the US warnings that they were going to do this so that no US personnel is killed. And even if you see Iran's attack last year when Israel attacked it first, it was limited. It was they used slow moving drones, and when Israel hit back, they just said, "Well, you didn't really do any damage," and they stopped the fighting. If
Mhm.
Iran was a suicidal, jihadi state, it wouldn't really matter whether you destroy them. They would just be like, okay, so let apocalypse, let this be an apocalypse. Let's just destroy ourselves. But if you've seen their
Right.
actions, if you've seen the actions of people who are taking calculated, rational steps. They did not want a conflagration with the US. Even with Israel, the initial attacks last year was also okay. Let's not escalate so far. Now they had to do this to tell Israel to say, you know what, keep poking us. We're good. We have the capacity to do a lot of damage to you. And mind you, Iran's missiles went up against the best missile defense systems in the world. The British were involved, the US was involved, the Israelis, even the Jordanians shot down the Iranian missiles that were flying over their airspace, right? So Iran basically, the, from reports that I saw, that Israel got what even Ukraine wasn't given, what has not been given. Israel got them, and Iran was able to do that much damage in 12 days. So, if this was a war of attrition between Israel and Iran without the backing of the US, my money is on Iran, because Iran is a much more bigger country, land wise. It's a much more it has a much more bigger population. It's a mountainous country. It's been under sanctions for decades, so it's used to taking the pain. Israelis are not used to taking that pain, and you can see within the first few days, some Israelis were already calling for peace. That this thing has to end.
You know, I don't know about that part about Israelis not being able to take pain. Like I said, I mean, I was surprised getting on a city bus in Haifa, and this is quite some time ago. Um, you got little old ladies with their with their automatic weapon slung over their shoulder. Uh, I know that they have a very dark sense of humor. Um, I bet the Israelis. I
No,
don't know
no, no,
about
no.
them not being able to take pain.
I'll explain what I mean by that. They're not able to take
Mhm,
pain. Who have they majorly been facing off against? Hamas, Hezbollah. Those are
mhm,
just ragtag militants that really can't do much damage to the Israelis. Their rockets are homemade rockets that can't do
mhm.
much. They've been firing into Israel for decades, right?
Right.
Not decades, but for years, right? And how many Israelis are really killed in those attacks? There are hundreds of missiles being fired from Hezbollah, from Hamas. It doesn't really do much, right? But in 12 days, see what I mean. They're not used to this level of force being used against them.
Right.
This was on a different scale. It's not something that it could have sustained. There were a lot of Israelis fleeing during the 12-day war.
Yeah, I
the,
see. I see what you mean.
the airports were shut, but they were trying to cross into Egypt and so many other places. If the war had continued that way, if it had been the sort of war that's been fought between Russia and Ukraine, I can tell you for a fact that without the help of the US, Israel will fold. It would fold because it's unsustainable given its population, given the fact that it's such a small country, right? Where the Iranians can just saturate their airspace with missiles and do a lot of damage. The Israeli version of the Pentagon was hit by the Iranians. The Weizmann Institute for Research was hit. Biggest oil refinery in Israel in Haifa was hit, and so many other very critical infrastructure were hit within 12 days. And this was after Israel decimated the entire command structure of the Iranian military, or the IRGC. So if Iran, and mind you, Iran's response came less than 24 hours after Israel carried out its initial attack. The response was overwhelming in less than 24 hours. So this was on a different scale. This wasn't what they were used to at all.
Okay.
Anyway, I think gotten
You know,
my
there's a comment here about talking about corporations and weapons manufacturing. Again, this was a New York Times story. Maybe I read yesterday,
mm,
and it was more an opinion piece, but the point about the defense industry, the Lockheed Martins and stuff like that. I don't know if they're actually going, egging it on. But they do have a vested interest in keeping some of these hostilities up. Now, I'm not going to go so far as to say, hey, they're like going at a boy, keep going. Here's some more missiles. But that is something to keep in mind. That there's some of the big boys in the defense industry are, you know um, helping out, providing munitions.
Yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, that's the nature of capitalism. It doesn't matter who gets screwed as long as the bucks and the money is coming in.
Exactly.
So it doesn't matter if people are dying. They're selling a product. They're selling a commodity. They're not going to say they're selling guns. They'll say they're selling a product. And so yeah, this might be an opportunity for them to also test weapons.
Yes.
This
Well,
move that
funny
is
enough, those bunker busters had never been used in outside of a test environment.
exactly. So of course they would want to go for something like that. They want to see how it's going to work in a real life scenario. And they've gotten enough intelligence data to say, okay, how can we improve upon this? Right?
Mhm.
How did it fare in a real world situation? So yeah, war is a business just at the cost of human lives. That's the tragedy of war. Anyway, Stanley, thank you so much for
Oh, no problem.
joining. Yeah, I
Good
can
to
see.
good to be back.
Yeah, I can see TL Oka. TL Oka, good. Thanks for joining. Rachel Malone and some other persons who didn't comment, but it was good having you guys. And we'll catch up soon again. We'll just be
Okay.
doing the live streams not too long, so that we can go
Well,
rest.
yeah, it's pretty late there, right?
Yeah, it is. It is almost 12 midnight. So
Oh, damn! I thought it was like right around. I didn't even know it was. I was thinking it was like 10 something, but I didn't know there was that
yeah,
much of a time difference.
yeah, it
Yeah, it's
is.
almost 7 o'clock p.m. here.
Uh, okay, okay. All right, Stanley. Thank you
All
so
right,
much. Thanks,
take it
everyone. Like,
easy. See you next
share,
time.
subscribe, and see you in another live stream. It's bye for now.